Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told out of Voice of Radio. So today, it is finally time to continue our history of the Pokemon trading card game series. We have made it all the way up to Primal Clash, and this was a cool set. There weren't that many good cards compared to other sets, but this is maybe the biggest set yet for good new decks. There were many decks that came around in this set that ended up repping very, very large at big tournaments like Nationals, and the World's winning deck came from this set as well. Now, it was released in Japan on December the 13th, 2014, just in time for Christmas, and it followed in English not that long after on February the 4th, 2015. And I generally refer to this as a soft Alpha Ruby and Omega Sapphire set. You see, it wasn't a big in-your-face, hey, this is a Gen 3 remake set, but then it clearly was a Gen 3 remake set. So, for instance, it brought in Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre, who were, of course, the versions of the box legendaries from those remakes, as well as a bunch of other relevant things. And one of the cool things it introduced was ancient traits. So, the weird thing was, they weren't unique to each Pokemon. There were a certain amount of them, and essentially each of them was shared among multiple Pokemon. So, Omega Barrier could be seen on Primal Groudon, although let's be clear, I will always think of this as a Regirock thing, and Omega Barrier said that whenever your opponent played a trainer card, other than tools and stadiums, it didn't do anything to this Pokemon. They couldn't be gusted up, for example. We saw Omega Barrage, which is best seen on Excadrill, that literally just let you attack twice in your turn, and if you got a knockout, they'd have to put a new Pokemon up. We saw Alpha Growth on Pokemon like Swampert as a nice little example, and that said when you attach an energy card from your hand to this Pokemon, you could attach two, which was awesome. Had to be attached at the same time, but still, that was kind of brilliant. And Alpha Recovery, I could only show you Bidoof to demonstrate this one. When this Pokemon is healed, double the amount that is healed. And they weren't even, incidentally. Omega Barrier and Omega Barrage were way better than Alpha Growth and Alpha Recovery, and it wasn't even close. And it was interesting to note that all of the Mega EXs, rather than getting those secret rares they've been getting for a little while, they moved to getting just full arts. So every Mega EX would now get itself a full art. Those secret rares from the past couple of sets were gone. And we did have a bunch of new Pokemon EX and Mega EXs. And what is kind of cool is that this time round, all of them got full art versions, which is rather lovely indeed. So we got ourselves Trevenant, that was honestly not a great card. Saw a bit of play here and there, because it could deal extra damage if you piled Grass Energy on, but it was never a great card. Camerupt EX let you discard as many Fire Energy as you like and deal 50 damage for each one on there. That saw a bunch of play. Wailord EX was a great card, and honestly, it was mostly because it had super high HP rather than anything else. 250 on an EX was ridiculous. Kyogre EX wasn't great, but the Primal would make up for it. Groudon EX was fine, but really the Primal made up for it. Sharpedo EX, it was a fun card. Had Energy Denial and all of that, but it never set the format on fire. Aggron EX was fine, the Mega was the best thing about it, even that wasn't great. And Gardevoir again was fine, but really we were holding out for the Mega. Now, in terms of the Megas, we had Primal Kyogre and Primal Groudon. They were called Primal, but they were still Mega Pokemon. And Primal Kyogre was kind of awesome, because 4 energy, 150, and you did have to move 2 energy from this Pokemon to one of your bench. But you also did 30 damage to each of your opponent's benched Pokemon EX, so that would actually add up damage-wise very quickly. And it did have Alpha Growth, so you could attach that extra energy to it. Primal Groudon had Omega Barrier, so it couldn't be gusted up, etc. And it was just 4 energy, discard a stadium, 200 damage. It was a very good card, took some setup, was very, very cool indeed. In terms of megas that were not primal, there were a couple others of those as well. There was Mega Gardevoir EX, which was really, really good. We'll get to that one in a moment. And there was Mega Aggron EX, and I've always liked Aggron because it evolves from Aaron, which is my middle name. But 4 energy was way too expensive. 120 damage, and if you wanted to, you could flip a coin. And if heads, you did 240, which was great. But if tails, you did 20 to each of your bench, and it was 4 energy, and it was just too expensive in the end. As good as it looked like it could be, way too expensive. Now, we did get some full art supporters in this set. We got Archie's Ace in the Hole and Maxie's Hidden Ball Trick. We'll see more on them later. They were amazing. Professor Birch's Observation, which actually did see a bunch of play even though it was super annoying. And Teammates, it was a very, very cool card if you were behind in the game. We then did see 4 gold cards, and you can see this is one of the sets that's leading into all the ridiculous secret rares we have nowadays. We saw gold versions of Dive Ball, a great draw card we'll talk about in a moment. Enhanced Hammer, which is really good for getting rid of that special energy. Switch, and everybody loves Switch. And Weakness Policy, that again we'll talk about in a moment. It took away your weakness. Now, in terms of the pre-release promo here, we are talking about Kingdra. Not a particularly stunning card, but it did at least have an ancient trait, so it wasn't all bad, ladies and gentlemen. It wasn't all bad. In terms of the most expensive cards in the set, you're really looking at Primal Groudon, Primal Koga, and Wailord, the full arts, all of which come in at around about $40. It's not like a lot of modern sets. There aren't a whole bunch of cards that are absolutely just brilliant and amazing and super expensive, and they're here because they're playable and cool. Now, in terms of theme decks, I love this. It was the Gen 3 remake set, so we ended up with 2 theme decks, one for Groudon and one for Kyogre. The Groudon theme deck was Earth's Pulse. Yes, it came with a Groudon coin. I love when they do this. And you got yourself a holo and a non-holo Groudon. Holo was exclusive. It was a non-holo in the set. And then you got yourself non-holo versions of Rhyperior, Medicham, and Manectric. The non-holo Manectric was exclusive to the deck. Ocean's Core was your Kyogre theme deck, and it did come with a Kyogre coin, which I very much appreciate. And you got yourself holo and non-holo Kyogre, the holo being exclusive to the deck. And then you got yourself non-holo versions of Whiscash, Woolrain, and Milotic, the non-holo Milotic being exclusive to the deck. I should say a lot of this information does come from Bulbapedia, a great place to go and do some Pokemon research. So yeah, these were pretty cool theme decks. Now, moving into the best cards, there were a few, but it's not quite like it was in other sets. It really was the decks that set Primal Clash apart. So Primal Groudon, we've already mentioned, it had that amazing ancient trait, the one that stopped you being gusted up, etc. And really, you would just sit on the bench, build up 4 energy, and come and smash with Gaia Volcano. Because you couldn't be gusted into the active, you would basically just be able to sit there and chill for a while until you were ready to come out and smash. Now, Primal Kyogre, I never liked it anywhere near as much, but the fact that you could attach 2 energy, and then the fact that you did 150 to the active and 30 to each of your opponent's bench DXs, it did well, and it was a powerful attack, and it was good enough. Now, Wailord, as I mentioned, was a super weird card, because Wailord had an ability, when you attach an energy, heal all special conditions, which was cool, and 5 energy, 120 go to sleep wasn't good enough. But it had 250 HP, and the fact of the matter is that the vast majority of decks around at the time could not deal 250 HP in one go. It just wasn't a thing. So you would just play it with a whole bunch of healing. I mentioned Rough Seas last week. We'll get to that in a moment. That was clearly great for healing. Max Potion was still out at the time. And you would basically just sit there and heal turn after turn after turn until your opponent just ran out of cards. It wasn't a deck that tried to win by knocking out Pokemon. It won by not getting knocked out. And there was one more Mega in the set that was really good and playable, and that was Mega Gardevoir. 3 energy minimum, and it did 30 damage for each fairy energy attached to all of your Pokemon. And there were 2 cards we've previously seen that were phenomenal with this, because you had Xerneas with Geomancy that attached 2 energy from your deck just with its single energy attack, which was amazing. And then we also had that Aromatisse that would let you just move energy around your field as you like. And that obviously opened up max potion plays as well. Move the energy, max potion, move it back. And this ended up being a very, very good deck indeed. Now, we also saw that Bunnelby was a very cool card. It did have that Omega Barrage Ancient trait, let you attack twice per turn. And for 1 energy, you could discard the top card of your opponent's deck. But really, you could discard 2. And for 1 energy, you shuffled a card from your discard pile into your deck. And because we're talking single energy basic Pokemon here and colorless energy at that, this could be teched into a whole bunch of decks, and it really was. And it could be used to recover your cards or mill your opponent. If your opponent ever got down to 2 cards in their deck, you could just drop Bunnelby and win the game instantly. Bunnelby was a one-of in a lot of decks. It doesn't look great on the face of it, but Bunnelby really was amazing for pretty much the whole time it was out. Now, Milotic was a very cool card. When you played this Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon, you could put a card from your discard pile into your hand. And this was often used, for instance, in Night March decks to recover double colorless energy, as an example, because that was obviously a card that was very difficult to actually get back. So this could give you just another run through that energy, or whatever you liked. It was great for consistency. Hippowdon, now I'm going to be perfectly honest with you here, I do not remember Hippowdon being good. I played the whole time this set was legal. I was playing really seriously before this set came out, and I'm still playing now years after it rotated. And I do not remember this Hippowdon being good, but I don't make these videos based just on my memory. I also go and do a whole heap of research, and it turns out this Hippowdon got 6th place at US Nationals in 2015. I have no memory of this whatsoever, but Eduardo Gonzalez went and got 6th place at US Nats with Hippowdon, so apparently it's a card we need to take seriously. Now really, it's a free energy, 60 damage, and during your opponent's next turn, prevent all effective attacks, including damage, done to this Pokemon by Pokemon EX. And yes, that included Megas. Well, I'm going to tell you about a whole bunch of good decks in this video. And other than Hippowdon, they are mostly built around EXs. And by mostly, I mean completely. So this was actually just a really good counter. I have no idea how this slipped me by at the time. It's a fighting Pokemon. This is the kind of thing I should have been all over. And I'm sorry to Hippowdon that I wasn't. But now I think we've righted a wrong here. Now, Camerupt DX is a card that I played around with a little bit. It wasn't ready yet. It would be ready, well, come back to the next history video, I'll tell you more about it. But it really was just try and get as much fire energy on the field as you can, get rid of it all, and deal 50 damage for each one you got rid of. This is one of the few Pokemon around that could actually KO any Pokemon in the game, and for that reason, people played around. But it wasn't ready yet. We needed a new Camerupt that wasn't here. Now, Swampert, I mentioned earlier because it's got that alpha growth, but it was actually not alpha growth that made us like Swampert. It was Diving Search. It was an ability to let you search your deck for any card and put it on top of your deck. And then you could, draw a card after. And the thing is, Swampert, because of Archie's Ace in the Hole, which we'll get to in a moment, actually did get teched into a bunch of decks. It seems too awkward, and sometimes it was, but in decks that could use it, this was a really, really nice draw engine. Search engine, get you whatever you wanted. Ninetales was kind of fun. It stopped your opponent playing stadiums, or but you were playing to stop your opponent. If you wanted your stadium to stay in play, a common trick at the time was to play your stadium and then put Ninetales into play, because the most common way to get rid of stadiums is to replace it with your own. Well, this meant your opponent couldn't play their own stadium, so unless they had some kind of attack or something else that could get rid of a stadium, this was a really nice way to lock your stadium in play. Medicham was a fighting Pokemon I absolutely did have a play around with, and I wasn't the only one. It never ended up being quite good enough, but it was really cool. Medicham had Omega Barrage, let you attack twice, and for 2 energy, 30 damage, not affected by weakness or resistance. But remember, at the time, 30 damage didn't really mean 30 damage, because we had Strong Energy that let you do an extra 20 damage. We had Muscle Band that let you do an extra 20 damage. We had Fighting Stadium that let you do an extra 20 damage. So it wasn't really 30 damage, it was quite a bit more, and you could do it twice. Medicham was never a top tier deck, but it didn't stop people like me playing around with it. Similarly, Torchic. Torchic always seemed like a bit of a joke, and maybe it was, but it again had Omega Barrage, and like I say, these ancient traits were not made equally. This one was amazing. But you could discard a Fire Energy to draw 2 cards. Doing it twice was a really nice draw engine early in the game. Or 1 energy, 20 damage, flip a coin. If tails, it does nothing. But time you add some tools and stuff to boost up that damage, this could be really fun. I like Torchic. And also, it was never a top tier card, but I've got to mention just before we get to the trainers, that Excadrill. Man, me and that Excadrill had some fun. It, again, had Omega Barrage. Dredge let you search the deck for 2 energy and attach them, and then Macklaw did 50 damage for 3 energy, which should be too expensive, but if you didn't have any energy on Excadrill, attach, Dredge, Macklaw, go. I once went undefeated at a tournament with Seismitoad Excadrill, although I should mention, although I went undefeated, that is true. I won 3 games out of 3. I did get 2 game losses. I turned up at the beginning of round 3 because I was having to wait at home for a sofa to be delivered. And, yeah. So I did start the day at 0-2. But then I won 3 games in a row, and it was amazing. I loved that deck. Moving over into trainer cards then, we had Acrobike. Look at the top 2 cards of your deck, put one in your hand, discard the other. There were times that you would have to discard a good card because you'd see 2 good cards. But the fact of the matter is, it was item-based draw. It was great. It saw a huge amount of play in speed decks. Archie's Ace in the Hole and Maxie's Hidden Ball Trick were very literally broken. You could only play them if it was the last card in your hand, and then it let you put a water Pokemon from your discard pile onto your bench and draw 5 cards. Well, that was Archie's. Maxie's let you put a fighting Pokemon on the bench and draw 5 cards. The thing is, these were super easy to actually use, because at the time we had Battle Compressor, which let you discard 3 cards from your deck, which was a really nice start. And then you had Execute, which would let you just put it from the discard pile into your hand. So essentially, you would just fix things. So if we look at Ultra Ball, discard 2 cards from your hand and search for a Pokemon. But if you had 2 Execute in your discard pile, and with Battle Compressor you often would, you would actually choose whether you discarded 1, 2, or 0 cards from your hand. If you want to discard 1 card, bring 1 Execute back. If you want to discard no cards, bring 2 Execute back. Plus, we had Computer Search, which was discard 2 cards from your hand, but then search for any card, which really helped out with this combo. And we had both Versus Seeker and Jirachi. Versus Seeker would get a supporter card from your discard pile. Jirachi would get it from your deck. So you could Ultra Ball for Jirachi for Maxies or Archies, or you could Versus Seeker for whichever one that it actually was you needed. And because we had all of these cards that discarded from your hand, but Execute to make sure you never had to discard too many, and we had both Jirachi and Versus Seeker to get it back, it was actually super consistent to do this. And we saw, for instance, Jacob Van Wagner went and won the World Championship with an Archie's Blastoise deck because this was super consistent. It was ridiculous, ladies and gentlemen. Absolutely ridiculous. Dive Ball was a great little card. Let you search for any water Pokemon. In water decks, it was absolutely ridiculous. Shockingly enough. Professor Birch's Observation was a fun card. Shove your hand into your deck, flip a coin. If heads, draw 7. If tails, draw 4. Your opinion on this card really depended on how well you could flip heads. Objectively, it was better than Shauna, because the expectation is more than 5 cards, but I hated it and I hated to flip and I would never play it over Shauna. Repeat Ball let you search for a Pokemon that you already had in play, so great for decks that played many similar Pokemon. And it was a really good run of stadiums. Rough Seas let you heal 30 damage from each of your water or lightning Pokemon. Saw a huge amount of play. Scorched Earth let you discard a fire or fighting energy from your hand and draw 2 cards. Saw a huge amount of play. Shrine of Memories let you use the attacks of pre-evolved Pokemon. So Groudon, for instance, if we go back to that for just a second, Groudon wasn't great. We liked Primal Groudon. But regular Groudon had a decent 2 energy attack that could get rid of energy, whereas Primal Groudon only had a 4 energy attack, so you better believe people used it. And then we had Silent Lab, which turned off abilities, which was ridiculous, and any deck that didn't need abilities, oh, they loved it. No, ancient traits are not abilities. We then had Teammates, and if one of your Pokemon was KO'd during your opponent's last turn, let you search for any 2 cards. Great for decks that tended to play from behind. Weakness Policy, which was a tool that you attached that took away your weakness. Again, sorry, Groudon loved this, because Groudon did not want to be one-hit KO'd. That was horrendous. And then we had Wonder Energy, which prevented any effective attacks other than damage to the Fairy Energy to which it was attached. So we had some really good trainers here. But the real story of Primal Clash are the decks. So we've got to start off with Archie's Blastoise. This was the deck with which Jacob Van Wagner won the World Championships in 2015, and the general conceit of the deck was using Archie's Ace in the Hole to go and get your Blastoise out. Remember, Blastoise could attach as much energy during your turn as you like, as long as you had it in your hand, and then you would smash with Keldeo EX, which was your main attacker here. And if you got enough energy on Keldeo, it could KO anything, and Blastoise would let you do so. We had a real speed version of the deck here with Trainer's Mail and Acrobike. And we also need to remember that Superior Energy Retrieval was around at the time. Let you go and get 4 energy from the discard pile back into your hand, which was clearly a great, great thing. And this was just... it seemed like a deck that shouldn't be consistent enough. But it was. And because it was consistent, it just owned. Just absolutely owned, ladies and gentlemen. And like I say, Jacob won the World Championships with it. It's a pretty ridiculous card. Now, we also saw that Primal Groudon was a very good card. Stefan Tobacco got 12th place at US Nationals, and Ross Cawthorn, not me, different Ross, although people do sometimes get us confused, got 12th at Worlds with it. So it was a really good deck to play if you wanted to get 12 at a gigantic tournament. And you would have cards like Wobbuffet, which would turn off abilities. So essentially you leave Wobbuffet in the active, turning off your opponent's abilities. And then you set up your Groudon on the bench, because again, you really needed to sit on the bench, build up Primal Groudon, and bring it up when you were ready. Landorus EX was a really nice card here. Just a single energy, good fighting type attacker. It saw play in a whole bunch of these kind of decks. And we did see that Bunnelby actually saw play here. Could recover some of your more important cards, but it also was just good for decking out your opponent if they took too long while you were setting up. Corinna was a great card here because it searched out everything that you needed, which was kind of cool. Robo-Sub was another great card for, well, just buying time, wasting time. You would have a Robo-Sub in the active, and your opponent would KO it but not take a prize, and then you would buy yourself enough time to actually get set up. Mega Turbo was a really important card just for getting your energy on your Groudon a little bit more quickly, because again, you needed to get the 4 energy on there. If you didn't get the 4 energy on quick enough, your opponent could actually win, and that was definitely not what you wanted to do. So Mega Turbo became a really, really good option in that regard. And obviously, we got to mention Strong Energy here, because you did extra damage. Simple as that. It was cool. Now, Wailord was more of a surprise deck. It actually got 2nd place at US Nationals. Enrique Avila actually played this, and my apologies for any terrible pronunciations here. But essentially, what you would have is you'd have Suicune, because that could sit there and, well, just block your opponent. And the whole point of Wailord was blocking. Suicune blocked EXs. If your opponent didn't have an answer to Suicune, you won the game pretty quickly. But even if they did, you would basically just sit and chill with Wailord, and if your opponent couldn't one-hit KO, they wouldn't win the game. You had Team Flare Grunt, which would get rid of their energy, which was kind of hilarious for you, not for them. And you would play Cassius, which let you shuffle this Pokemon into your deck. So you would just stay around and then shuffle in, but you wouldn't lose anything because there's nothing really to lose, because you were just a single basic Pokemon. Max Potion healed completely and you lost the energy, but you weren't attacking, so it didn't matter. You had Enhanced Hammer to get rid of your opponent's special energy, which was kind of annoying for them. You had Hard Charm, so you would take a little bit less damage. It was ridiculous. Oh, and then obviously Rough Seas, because Rough Seas would heal 30 damage per turn. So especially if you were not quite KO'd, you would just sit on the bench and just heal turn after turn. But even if you were active, it wasn't the end of the world, because you could essentially just sit there and you would basically take 30 less damage per turn, which was awesome. Now, Primal Kyogre was another card that saw a fair bunch of play. Got 10th at the National Championships in the US, played by Omar Rayan. And I will say that was not the only top cut at US Nationals for Primal Kyogre. It had Rough Seas to heal and Hard Charm for more survivability. The only real weird card in the deck was the Absol from Roaring Skies, because that let you move 3 damage counters from one Pokemon to another. But bearing in mind, you would be doing 30 damage to all the benched EXs, so being able to move 30 damage was really kind of awesome. Mega Gardevoir was a very relevant deck, got 3rd place at German Nationals, played by Fatih Akdemir. Again, apologies for the pronunciation. And what you would basically do is just flood the field with fairy energy, and then just smash. Xerneas would get energy out in the early game, Aromatisse would let you move it around, Max Potion was huge. Again, you had the amazing trick, which is always what you wanted to try and do with Max Potion, whereby move the energy off, Max Potion, but you don't discard the energy, move it back. You'll notice most of the decks that use Max Potion never actually discarded the energy, they had a way around it. And then we had Fairy Garden, which gave you free retreat, which was really important, because what you could essentially do was free retreat with Fairy Garden, put a new Pokemon active, and then move the energy up, so you would essentially just be able to switch and move the energy, and there was no downside. It was a little bit ridiculous. Also meant nothing could ever get stuck in the active. And then finally, that Hippowdon deck I told you about. Eduardo Gonzalez got 6th place at US Nationals with Hippowdon. It played Landorus, that single energy really good attacker. It played Seismitoad, because Seismitoad blocked trainers. It was still a great card, especially to buy you time while you were setting up. And it did play the combination of Hypnotoxic Laser and Verbank City Gym, which would poison and maybe put asleep and just get some extra damage on the field, which was very important, I think is fair to say. And if your opponent didn't have an answer for Hippowdon, as apparently a lot of people at US Nationals didn't, you would be able to run through. That is 6 legitimate top-tier archetypes, all of which came because of this one set. That is pretty gosh darned impressive, ladies and gentlemen. That is pretty gosh darned impressive. But now it's over to you guys. I've told you everything you need to know about Primal Clash, but now I want to hear from you guys. Did you play at the time? If so, what are your memories? And if you didn't play at the time, I want to know your thoughts on the set having seen it now. So go nuts in the comment section, but be nice! And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCG Radio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can do exactly that. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.